Okay, I think we're on. So, Freddie, if you wanna walk us through what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name's Freddy, and today we'll talk about AI and digital for travel marketer. More specifically, what we're presenting is how to operationalize your generative AI content production efforts in the world of travel. So our objective is by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to understand how to move AI from an innovation to an execution process and framework. You'll learn how to apply quality standard process to operationalize your Gen AI from a business perspective and really fast track your production process through our learnings. So a little bit about myself. My name is Chanut or Freddy. I am French, but I'm based in Sydney most of the time. Today, you see me from London. My favorite destination is in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. That's an amazing place in one of those flyover countries most people call, but highly recommend if you're a travel fanatic like myself. In terms of travel brag, I've been through about 61 countries and counting, and drove a tiny car through about a third of the world, from London to Mongolia. And over the years, I've raised about 20,000 for charity through my adventure travels. So really, very much when I'm not talking about travel, I am actually doing the thing I'm selling. I have about 20 years of experience across the travel industry. Worked at American Express Travel as my early years. As part of the Expedia, so part of a company that was acquired by Expedia, and done digital strategy, machine learning, analytics, some CX. Heavily involved in SEO, which I'll be talking today, performance, direct response, and martech. And I've worked with DMOs, OTAs, obviously, working with Expedia, airlines as well, and tour operators. These are some of the clients I've worked with. So a little bit about
marketing. Can we just check that your slides are moving, Freddie? I think we're still stuck on the first one. So.
Oh, that's not good.
We did test this, I promise you, right before this webinar. So I'm not sure why it's not working right now. Here we go. That's better.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. Excellent. So, so let's talk a little bit about who we are and why we're talking to you about travel. So, Marketing Trust was built for travel brand. Actually, before building Marketing Trust, I was at, as I mentioned, part of Expedia and accommodation.com, and really, I was fed up with having low quality agency relationship, and thought we could build a better model of really working with high class teams, really that through three unique capabilities: leading digital expertise, unparalleled travel and tourism experience, and with localized language and cultural capabilities. In terms of leading digital expertise, we are a data-driven digital agency first. We focus on being a global leader in data-driven digital marketing. We work with some of the largest websites in the world, and that really equipped us with a lot of sophisticated tools and expertise that we built over time. Our proprietary crawler has crawled about 200 million URLs, collecting 20 billion rows of data to enable us to optimize conversations that has generated tens of millions in additional revenue for clients. We optimized over 50,000 URLs for one travel client just using a proprietary platform called ScalePath. And this platform, pretty happy about that, was voted one of the most innovative marketing technology of 2023 by the Australian Financial Review. And last year, what's very important to this webinar is we delivered about 17,000 pieces of accurate, brand safe, and search engine safe travel content using our proprietary AI platform, which we built on top of large language models in a way that safeguards commercial data. So as mentioned, we live and breathe travel. We've worked with 37 different travel brands across 4 continents, whether OTAs, tour operators, meta, airlines, resorts, destination, insurance. I think we've done most of the industry, and we have. I've talked about having localized language and cultural capability. We have 54 team members based in key countries around the world. They speak 18 language and understand the local culture. And we have travel campaign active in 30 countries right now. But today, I wanted to, before I roll on my my speech, I just wanted to be clear that this is not your usual presentation format. In a usual presentation format, you'll have the vendor that will describe poor client having a problem. Oh my gosh, my client performance is decaying. My content performance is decaying. How can I possibly update all those old content piece? I am doomed. Please help. Comes the hero with a very complex and comprehensive solution. And with its secret sauce, we built an amazing machine, produced 10,000 pieces of content. You'll see you'll be swept away by our brilliance and how we thought about everything. And see the results for yourself. We've got a chart going up to the right and showing how clients had their best marketing life ever after with really good performance. No. Maybe it's too early for me having coffee, but the reality is we've all sat in those presentations and no one believes it. Not the presenter, not the audience. Now, today, this is a candid view of what we learned along the way. So we're sharing our experience so you don't have to go through the same pain. So hopefully you'll learn a bit more, and that will be a little bit more enjoyable for you to watch. So in terms of the content of this presentation, context and the current application, this is short window of why what we've done and why we started, and going through all the challenges we've overcome in rolling out things at scale, and summary of the key learnings. So in terms of context and current application for Gen AI. So everyone has probably tried doing prompt engineering and correction when you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, or others, and generally results are pretty good. It works. You're able to upgrade content. This is an example of some of the content our team has worked on. So repurposing basically existing work and turning that into a much better things. We've used a mix of ChatGPT and Midjourney to create visuals. And overall, Gen AI can make a few mistakes, but QA typically helps fix that. If you look closely at some of the visual on the bottom right, you'll see that poor chap working on that bench is missing a head. So this is easily picked up when you have a human scanning through that, while they include generative AI tools through the process, but it's not automatically picked up when you start rolling that at scale and not necessarily have a human behind every piece of content that the machine is producing. So in terms of the use case, what we really wanted to use the Gen AI solutions and large language models was to automate content update. This is very important. You have content that decays over time. Fresh information is critical for search engines to view your site as authoritative and relevant. So this is one way. The content repurpose at scale. So this is something that's coming up a lot in the conversation around future of search. How do we repurpose or hold high value copy into shorter content for conversion? And that could be turning text into videos or vice versa. The other important factor in travel is how do we localize any content in the relevant language for our source countries. Really working at how we build the content typically in English or a couple of the languages, and how do I make sure that the people in France, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in other countries where we don't necessarily have a lot of language skills can also be served high quality content that is not only in their language but culturally relevant. And then last but not least is really can we test what works and what doesn't? If we can reduce the cost of production, we should be able to really work things out, see what works, what doesn't, and how do I do that without necessarily having the product or engineering team support through all things. So in this presentation and this context, we've had a conversation with one of our large travel clients, and they said, hey, we've produced a whole raft of content pieces that are quite updated. So as everyone knows, COVID hits and no one really spent time updating content. So a lot of the information became outdated. For those of you that are living in Sydney, I wish we could still have a coffee for $3.90. That's not the case anymore. So this was a typical piece of content we wanted to update. It's not necessarily the highest in the order of conversion, but this is something that if you keep on having old content on your site, then you'll start dropping in relevance for Google and other search engines. So we wanted to really start with something simple, factual content, which is very important. How do we ground something that is actually useful for readers? And things like, we started with just flights to country. How can I find cheap flights to a country? When is the best time to book? What are the top cities? And the best time to go? So things to do and see in country. So again, fairly basic. We've been to countless sites that have automated content that really doesn't add value. One of the really big thing was we wanted that content to be useful to avoid being penalized by Google and other search engines for really low quality generative AI content. But we also wanted to ask a few questions with that pilot project is, in terms of business impact, is the new content helping ranking and traffic? If it doesn't, well, that's not great because we're investing in something that doesn't deliver results. Is it cheaper than human yet better than the templated content? If we can't control the quality, or it's end up being too expensive, then we'll probably be better off by having content that is just produced by a machine and really sort of automated, fill the gap type of content. Does it work in all languages? And can we actually scale without too much and can we actually scale without too much human interaction? In terms of the success criteria, so that we can create new content and not just a rehash of content that existed. It doesn't require engineering resources to implement, and not just yet, at least for pilot projects. We can use third-party data to augment information. This was important because, like many companies, it's often easier to pay for and acquire third-party data than to obtain data that is stuck in some operational silos within your organization. That we can create consistency of content, so that matching of brand and follow brand guidelines and tone of voice without being robotic. What we don't want is the same sort of style of content that looks horrible, that sounds horrible, that reads poorly, that we see in all of the automated content that you see across or most of the OTAs, metas, and inventory-driven sites. Big thing for us was the client's team is a small team. So how do we limit the QA effort? Someone's going to review this, someone's going to have to check and validate, and we really want to make that as little as possible. The last thing is obviously, can we produce on-time delivery. I'll get to that later. We thought, yes, of course, I will just be punching a few prompts and the machine will produce the content. Turns out not to be. So our approach was, again, focus on a subset of pages, flights to country, iterate based on performance data. If it works, we can expand and we can grow. Spoiler alert, we've managed to get it right, and we have expanded since. And so that we can roll out to more templates, more pages, and increase in complexity, and move towards more of a conversion-focused content. So first of all, before we even jumped into building on product sets and things like that, we just looked at, there's such a hype in the industry that we looked at 4 options. It's like going, all right, well, when we looked at the Jasper.ai and all the others, what we found, it was either too expensive, there were missing languages, the output was very messy, it was still very manual, lacked a lot of features, and also the initial tests were underwhelming when we want to start automating things. Again, a lot of those tools are basically a thin UI layer on top of OpenAI functions, and they are general purpose built. So they can accommodate someone in e-commerce, someone in fashion, in B2B, in travel and everything. And so often the quality isn't fantastic. So we looked at that and we've gone, all right, well, let's see if we can build that. Our initial assumption on where GenAI fits in terms of quality, we knew it would deliver scale, but at a much faster speed than a programmatic content that is static, or a programmatic content that offers dynamic information. It's better than machine translation in terms of how it reads. If you've ever tried to translate something in Japanese and then take another translator and translate that back, you end up with quite a funny sounding answer. We knew that it would not be perfect, so it'll be probably the quality would be probably worse, or let's say it'll be a bit more predictable, structured, robotic than what a localization agency could produce. But again, we'll be able to scale that faster and at a fraction of the cost. We certainly weren't expecting to produce pros like a freelance copywriter or freelance journalist. So this was more, let's keep that factual, let's keep that simple, and it would work. For us, we thought high value pages, really the piece that are around travel planning, dreaming phase, planning phase, and really high conversion items. You really want to have that by a human copywriter. Today, you cannot you cannot ask any of the AI tools to produce something that will really nail it for conversion and really be convey emotions the way a human could write, with travel expertise and person that been there to the place, to the experience, hotels or flights. What we thought could work is for that, what we call the torso, which is queries that are valuable, but they are already too big and at scale that we're not able to spend the resources to have a human write the content for. And that's basically to displace a lot of the programmatic content that used to be in there, where programmatic content is just fill the gaps type of content, automated content. Programmatic content is fantastic if you have content that needs constant refresh. So the average prices for flights in the last month or in the last week, the best price for hotels and ADRs for the next month. Those sorts of things you really want to automate rather than have to necessarily use a human or even like a large language model for them. So decided to build ourselves. as Jeremy Clarkson, my idol, would say, how hard can it be? But let's just connect to GPT-3, GPT-4 back then. I'll connect that to the environment, feed the right list of pages, and a few prompts in the right language, and we create the right prompt with some existing example, tone of voice and language, recruit a copy proofing team to validate content, and basically package it in a format we can easily upload, and job done. Well, nope, didn't quite work like that. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned along the way. Excuse me a second. Initially, this was our approach, and we use what we call a zero-shot approach to build the first version of our AI writer. But something like OpenAI tools and API has built on pretty much the entire web and more. So they should have all the information in the world, and they should be able to produce it. What's zero shot in the environment? So as you can see,
could you update the slides again?
Looks like there's a little lag.
There's a little bit of a lag there. We got there.
Okay, excellent. So if you look at this beautiful graph, sorry for the general look and feel of my machine learning presentations. If you look at the zero shots, which is the things that everyone does in ChatGPT, you describe the task in a few words. Basically, you don't give any context and things like that. In a window, you just go, hey, write me the top things to do in Uzbekistan, or where places to visit there. And really, the things that you use is prompt engineering to tweak and turn, and this is where a lot of the hype is at the moment. So this is good, but in terms of the quality and the task accuracy, it's probably the lowest of all the approach. Then you go typically to a few shot prompt, which is basically you give examples of solving the task into, I want you to be a travel writer, and this is the sort of content I want you to produce, and you make reference to content that already exists, whether fetch by web scrapers or directly in your system. Then we talk about retrieval augmented fusion prompting, which I'll talk a bit later. That's end up what we're doing. And then the last bit is the fine tuning for custom models. So we started with the zero-shot prompt, and we've gone, okay, let's see how, if it gets us to 80% quality, we might be sweet. And really, in terms of structure and how it looked, it was very simple. We inputted the list of country in a CSV file into a GPT-3 pipeline into the OpenAI API. We generated the prompt based on topics, writing styles, tone of voice, and then basically we looked at the output of the content from the API, and basically played a little bit with the parameters in the GPT-3 model. Yes, that was back then. So that really helped get something. But what we ended up with a few weird things. So top things to see and do in Australia. Canada is a vast country with diverse region. I know Canada and Australia are often cited together in the Five Eyes, but not necessarily in the tourism. It's a bit far away from each other. We then best city to visit in Saudi Arabia, with Toronto making the list, the top of the list. Again, not sure how that came about. And then when it came to tone of voice and style, as much as I love sailing, pirates, and everything, Ahoy Adventurous Traveler felt that wasn't quite on brand of what we wanted to do. We were still representing an established travel business, so it didn't feel quite right to talk that way to audience. So all of that really led to a lot of content that was just took an enormous amount of time to review and correct. And so that really was frustrating, and we realized that it wasn't the right way of producing the content. Even with when we were doing the fine tuning, that was not working. So too much variations. So we then applied what we call retrieval augmented generation. Let's see if it works better. The idea behind it is when we ask a prompt or we ask a question, it will first hit the knowledge base of what it has, then fetch the relevant knowledge, and then push that into the large language model. And the large language model having all of that corpora of information and really clear, detailed answers. So to avoid having Toronto as a top city in Saudi Arabia or Canada and Australia, helped really push the right answers. And so overall, that worked a little bit better. I'll go into what the tools we use. And that very much was, we then put the PDF, the text, typically of how the content we wanted to use, either as brand guidelines, but also as the information. So again, which cities, getting the list of cities, top cities per country, getting the top attractions, the weather patterns, travel data, so on and so forth, into a text splitter, so that we can really create the sort of data we need to be retrieved at the right moment. Then basically that text, along with a query, so the prompt, will be creating an embedding generator. So that enables us to then push that into the database that will be stored whenever we ask the prompt. And so in the prompt, we'll then have the query and the context of that, and that information will be fetched with the relevant documents to that query. So then we can push that into the model, and that spits out the answer. So this is in a nutshell how it works. The good news is it worked, or sort of. So in terms of,
let's just take 1 second for the slides to catch up. There we go.
There you go. So in terms of the content produced, again, something simple. We wanted really to make it work. So we wanted to refresh simple content. And in terms of the business impact answers, so did the new content help ranking and traffic? When we pushed it live, after I think about 4 to 6 weeks, we had a 13%, nearly 13% uplift for US traffic. So pretty happy about that. US being a competitive market. It is cheaper than humans, and it's certainly better than templated content. We work in all languages. Well, we still had issues with Korea and Japan. So I found that Korea and Japan and then traditional and simplified Chinese tends to be a bit tricky. Thai every now and again as well. That's that they know they're no troublemakers in the localization world, so it can be worked on. And the scale without too much interaction, that certainly felt like a work in progress. Tell you a bit more about that. So, but it was working well, not so much. The thing is, the model we used, the process we used, we ended up creating a whole raft of Jupyter Notebook and content. And this was great when we were really thrashing and dry testing and doing different things. But this has really started to create a lot of confusion in what's the right notebook we're using, what is the right documents we're working on, and that really started to get messy early on. Again, we started from something very basic, and that was the discovery of that. The cons, and it really needed a very messy and manual update and version control. And for those of you that played a little bit around with our scripts and others, Jupyter Notebooks are not a production tool. So this is very much a tool used by all data analysts and data scientists to do some analysis. And basically we used a very lightweight framework to query data into a production machine. So that started to break and cause issues. One of the challenges is quickly we struggle to get on brand. So this is some example of the feedback we received from more clients, where basically there were a few issues with the headings were started to pop up as sentences instead of questions. There's too many exclamation marks. We had texts that were too generic sometimes, and some of variations. And certainly one thing that we've learned is OpenAI has trained their model on travel data that use the word stunning, nice, vibrant a lot. And that really started to sound terrible. My favorite is we started having the Venice of absolutely every place and everything as soon as there was more than 2 rivers in a city. So so we ended up with something we didn't want, which was a default easily to generate traffic without given location. Really, basically, an unhelpful type of content. The other thing is when we moved to the product, when we started producing things, we really saw that it was a bit too verbose, and we really started to see a lot of challenges with that, where basically it started to be just the sort of content you see and read everywhere. And now you take this type of content in English and apply that to Italian, or to you start localizing the language, and that becomes absolutely terrible. So this is sort of this is a illustration that my Italian project manager is saying. It's like, this is really sort of all the imagery, all the passe and boring imagery that you have of Italy and things like that started to come up. And that's more or less impression of his face when he started to review the content on the page. So really what we ended up with is having a ton of voice format and the style and information level issues. So really that started to creep in, being a real problem, especially when we don't have all the language capabilities in our team, and especially reviewing thousands of pieces of content is can be a tedious work, and for those that are not familiar with it, it can be difficult to master. So really, we were relying on external editors that we recruited to help us do that, and we ended up having too many back and forth and styling guidelines and things like that, to the point where really we ended up having to build an interface designed to really pick up the issues for the whenever the content came about, and really show, is it good, is it bad, and any comments and fixes that we could produce. And so really this is the sort of things that that we had. So what caused the issues is messy, bad data forces to refresh the content a lot. And so you imagine you're going back through a full cycle of having to go back, which content piece is bad, okay, refresh that, and see if it has updated. We had quite a lot of tech limitations that stopped us from having production runs. So hitting our APIs, API limits, API being unstable, and a few things breaking. And that really meant a long, costly, and frustrating QA process. So imagine you go, yep, we should be on time. Oh, no, we're not on time because we found a batch of content that needed to rework, which has been frustrating for us and the clients as well. And so we ended up building our interface for human editors to review and approve the content in a far more streamlined manner. So all of those learnings, we turned that into a process that really sort of is fairly simple, which is have a template, define the templates you want to use, look at the data you want to collect, and make sure that data is clean, which is easier said than done. Then work on your product development. So tweak the prompt, ingest the data, have the right context to produce the content, and then really once you start having the batch of content that is being created, work on the quality standards. Make sure you align with your clients. Make sure you align with your editorial team about what is the right level. Is it good? Is it an error? Is it a styling thing that you'd like? Is it an opinion? Is it a preference? Those things matter because you will have a lot of different people will have a different interpretation of what good quality content means, especially when you have the difference between what a data engineer thinks the quality is versus a content manager versus a copywriter. So in terms of template definition, really define the number of sections, what data is available and likely to be used, what's the content sample, the feedback from client team, and really have a final, we are good, final proposal and validations. Once we have that, we go, this is the content we're going to produce and this is what it sounds like. So an example for that is we started to share the flights to country, how to in that particular format, so that make it easy to see what's going to do. And we discussed, hey, can we add the visa questions? Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? Then in the data collection, obtain the reliable data for each and every topic, build your database, and run the data validation and manual refinement. I'll get into that in a little bit about some of the learnings around really validate, because it's not necessarily that it's bad data. Some of the data may not be, is not the information you want to surface. You will find, here's a tip, and what we found is when we look at the top destinations, top hotels, top flights, etc., we always have plenty of information. Have a look at unknown countries. Have a look at travel to Turkmenistan or countries that you're not traveling very often, and see what information you have available, because you might not be able to use the statements, or the system will hallucinate. So have backup, more default generic content that you can create. So almost like grammatic SEO. Then after that, select and adapt the relevant model, as I mentioned, set up the right guidelines and data retrieval for that consistency. Okay, well, I'm going to fetch this particular information about the weather from this segment of the database, and really define and testing. This is the heavy work that someone heads down, play with the prompt and work on the different agents to control the quality, revise, output, and fine tune. Give enough time for that. The more you'll get that right, the less you have to do in QA after. Then once you generate the first batch of content, thoroughly edit to identify issues, define the list of issues, again, what's how much it affects the content quality and whether that is passable or not. A small change in tone and style can mean that the system responds very weirdly. It's surprising how a small tweak, for example, for us going from gendered content in Romance language, so French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, to a non-gendered, means that the content quality really dropped, and that really caused a lot of issues in some of those languages. Those guidelines are critical, and they really are going to be key to your success, because people will have different views, and they will have a misalignment on the quality standard within the stakeholders, and that's important if you for your upward reporting as well, so they don't think that you're going to write like a for Fromers or Lonely Planets. And then once you've done that, go through the full content generation, content based on the guidelines, continuous feedback on the client from our clients to go, this is what we're doing, this is what we're seeing as well, and tweak that, and make sure if you're working with editors, pace their review efforts. What we found is you can only look at so many pieces of content that are pretty much the same, or sort of are about the same topic for so long. And what we found is the quality standard tend to drop if they work over an extended period of time, even if they're pros at it. Monitor quality of progress, give them feedback, a review, have a second editor potentially spot check their work, and then obviously give the client final opportunity to review. So this was a little light process, but I can assure you that that sort of work, that sort of process has been built over many stumbling that we've learned. So the key learnings, and I realize that I'm probably a little bad on time. We'll have a bit of time for QA. Is what we've learned is we've gone through the 5 stages of trauma. What we thought it would be is tech feasibility, quality standards, and performance. So really, is it the best model? What it was for us is very much alignment on expectations and quality. What we thought a good content was for Gen AI versus what a copywriter or an editor thought was very different. It's change management. It's human. Bring people on board around that. Some people in your organizations are going to feel threatened by having content that is generated by a machine, and especially a machine that is very much a black box. It's very hard to understand why a machine did a certain hallucination, so that can be difficult. Also, if you're working with a lot of content folks, they might see it as a replacement for their jobs, so they might feel threatened that their livelihood is on the line. And really, change management processes and project management is really key around the communications. So really, that what it was more than anything. We thought early on, oh gosh, clients are asking for the prompt we're using. We really don't want to give it away because that's our IP. We thought, oh, that's 70, 80% of the magic sauce. Turns out not at all. I think we estimate today that the prompt itself is about 20% of the problem. The main thing with that is what is going to be the real difference between a good quality content that you won't spend hours reviewing and the zero shot content that we've tried first with Toronto being a top city in Saudi Arabia is having the right grounding and the right RAG or retrieval augmented generation. So basically make sure that your model is using the right data. Something that is that you can easily forget is large language models are probabilistic, and that means they generate output based on what they observe in the training data. What is the logical next word coming up? So they don't have a concept of, is it true? Is it relevant? Does it make sense? They just go, hey, that word after word A sounds really good because everyone is using the same. So you end up with essentially some real garbage with the content produced and no idea why it's that. So in terms of artificial intelligence, it's intelligent in a way that it produces nice sounding content, but it doesn't necessarily means that it's true. Again, align the parties on qualities. What we thought our quality expectation was, it's a bit better than programmatic, but it's nowhere near as copywriter. But when you present the answer, people will still look at it and match it against the quality standard of a copywriter or journalist or travel writer. So again, really build a roadmap around what we can work towards quality, but be sure that you go back and go, this is critical. This content cannot go out because that there are issues, but this is styling preferences that even if it's not amazing, we'll get there. So sorry if I sound very boring on that, but it's super important for us because that really sort of made the difference, especially if you're going to communicate that with folks in your senior management that are not going to be involved. They all have used ChatGPT, they all think the content is amazing. There is a big difference there. The last one, another one is, at the moment, you're probably working in isolation. You're doing your innovation in your corner and working with it. Don't forget to involve your product team. Keep them in the loop. You don't have to have them giving you advice on exactly how to run your project, but having them in lunch and learn sessions or updates and regular updates on how it progresses and the learnings. Actually, with the right product team managers, I found that to be really valuable because you get them on side very early and really help them to make sure that they don't have to go through all the stumbling that you may have during your innovation phase or your design thinking and sort of lean startup phase, if you prefer. Documents, that's probably the biggest thing. It's document the errors. Most of the team wants to do most of the time the team wants to talk about what works and how to do it. Make sure that you ask your team to document what went wrong, and the logic behind that, because people might have to retrace the step. Another big learning, our team is distributed around the world. So we've got Ricardo in Italy on the left, River based in South Korea, Rohit based in Melbourne, and Anna based on the right, based in Portugal. And you can see me in the background correcting some text, based in Sydney. That was very hard to do the work when you're not collocated. If you can get your team together during the production process or even version 2, I highly recommend. It made a world of difference to be sitting at the same table and help troubleshoot. There are times where we was just production heavy, really we're all busy with all things, but it's simple. Just jot around just go over someone's shoulder to look at the result. Means that our data scientists understood what it meant. Our people in charge of editing guidelines meant that they understood how the prompts were generated and so on and so forth. Really important if you can do that. Be prepared to have more problems and more questions for every more challenges coming up for every question answered. And this is, if we generate a prompt, if we do that, do we do that in English and then translate? Do we do that in language? Okay, if we do that in language, that's great, but we need dedicated resource to create the prompt and validate that the input is correct versus the output being wrong. Whereas if we do it in English, it's faster, but it adds extra step in the process. It adds an opportunity also for the system to create errors. Again, expect some of that. I've alluded to data. Clean data is critical. You've probably heard the garbage in, garbage out. Still it holds very true. Here's an example of all the IATA codes for airports. And you might have noticed that there is actually a Disneyland Paris airport that never been used, but Disney wanted their own airports when they started in Paris. So you might end up with, technically the data is correct, but it doesn't make sense. The other thing is, you can see the one below, Donetsk, not probably the one you want. I don't know if you want to fly there at the moment. Last but not least, sometimes the data is correct, but it could be very misinterpreted. So that's an example that we, in our French language, we picked up where flights from Canada to Bulgaria. And what it was suggesting is for people to take Lufthansa cargos. So that also came up with some European source country and African destinations. So we looked at it and gone, there's nothing wrong with the data. What happened is we had some of the cargo data finding their way into information, but the output could be very poorly misinterpreted. Imagine the Guardian telling that such and such online travel agency or meta search or travel business recommends their African passengers to travel cargo. Really, again, could be very misinterpreted with that. So highly recommend you look at the input and what it means. This came up because there was just very few flights between Canada and Bulgaria. But again, that's the sort of things that could really trip you up. The type of data, basically the ranking, potentially, you might have to build specific scripts or variations based on the type of categories you're going to, type of destinations. So Russia, Syria, Ukraine, Yemen at the moment are definitely in the no-go zone, and others as well. So it takes a bit of effort to start with that and really classify, but the good news is it's built over time. So once you set regular review period, the effort to maintain that sort of data, which may exist somewhere on your in your environment, really will pay off in terms of QA. One of the things is we keep on having issues with testing different models. And so really choose a stable model first. We tried Llama, we tried Alpaca and things like that, and it was just a little too new. And that came right in the explosion of all the models that were appearing. So we ended up with OpenAI because it was the most stable of the bunch. Remind everyone that OpenAI API or an API for a large language model is not your ChatGPT, your chat window. ChatGPT has context and can be fine-tuned with human intervention. It also have a lot of guardrails built into it. An API doesn't have that. So consider that whatever your query the API, the answer must be correct on the first result. So that really has an impact in terms of the performance expectations of the model. One of the things, a small tip, you will max out your APIs at first. You basically probably send too many requests or things like that. Things have gone a lot better, but consider throttling your request. The screenshot you're seeing is the team talking about all the problems, hitting 500 errors, API errors today, all the time, API limits. If you can get the enterprise version, great, because that's going to save you a lot of time. If not, just hack your way into it by having multiple accounts and API keys. Sometimes using the right technology may be the wrong answer. So we've used vector database to do the retrieval augmented generation at first. The problem is it's quite a new technology. Very few people know how to use it, and it can be difficult. So think about that. Your iterations in producing that content is a long way from your laptop to your production. So essentially, you don't necessarily need a database for AI or something for AI at first. You need a database. You really want to match real world requirements and resources that you have versus what everyone is hyping up about. And so make sure that when you pick a technology, it's the sort of learning curve that you roll out for the organizations that will pay off year after year. So not something we're trying that cool new shiny toy versus we really more people learn how to query a database effectively. If you can, build tools and process to make QA as easy as possible. This was probably your biggest learning is the moment you start involving more people, things get really messy very quickly. So the more you do upstream, you do work to manage the quality output, the less you'll need in QA. That's simple. Review your editing process and publishing process to account for these production methods and how you might need to do reruns. One of the things we've put in now is having grounding or having checks done by another machine to produce to validate that it has factual accuracy. We wasted a lot of time in that step, and really make sure that you triple the amount of effort you'd have for a human until you're fully satisfied consistent output first. You do have in the models fine-tuning options to build feedback loop. Really recommended you take on the feedback from your QA team so that it gets better every time. And the last one is every time you do that, watch for cost blowout with all the extra rounds and token utilizations. So in a nutshell, in terms of organizations, humans, issues, bring everyone on board early. Not everyone's thrilled. Most people are cautious. Keep the tech and a product team on your side. Simple updates, lunch and learns will work well. Document about the project, the tech, the processes, the retros, the issues. On the quality side, manage expectations again. It's better than programmatic, but it's not as good as humans. The prompt and the models are probably 20% or less of the solutions. And a small innocuous change can have big issue with the output. So be ready to be flexible on that. The more you structure the content for consistency, the more robotic it will sound. But the more creative you have it, the more QC time you'll need to allocate to do that. And then test, and ready to fall back on your simpler content and tone of voice. In terms of tech issues, create your own custom model, your own custom token. It will make a difference in terms of avoiding having the very generic blurb, generic content, very variable quality that we've seen with ChatGPT or the APIs. The tech is unstable. Plan in your production runs for outage delays and errors, and it's evolving fast. One of the recommendations is have your rules and models sit not directly plug into the model, but have an abstraction layer to avoid the risk of being locked in with one technology, which is the issue with a lot of the UI tools that we're seeing today. Tells us in options, models and tools today. Claude 3 is probably Repurpose is one of the best ones. OpenAI is probably the most popular, but there are ones that are coming out that are really strong as well. And watch for, again, tech being unstable. Even a small scale increase from, we've seen that from 10 to 20 pieces, started to cause issues with tech and reliability. And data quality, as boring as it is, hallucination is a common issue. Feed your models better data, not better prompt. Work on your exclusion specific case scenario. Have fallback plans to potentially treat certain aspects of your content differently based on destinations, products you serve, and scenarios. Make sure you recruit your team of humans, have the right people, train them, learn, listen to their feedback to see what works. Budget and plan for better output in the early stages. And that was me. Hopefully I haven't overwhelmed you and given you a few things that we've learned along the way so you can work on that.
Thanks, Freddy. That was awesome. We are 2 minutes past the hour, which I mean, congratulations, Freddy. You managed to do the hour, which is, if anyone's been to one of Freddy's talks before, you'll know that Freddy could talk about this all day long, especially this topic. So keeping it to 1 hour is quite impressive, I think. So congratulations there. I'd give you a round of applause. So given that's the hour, I understand if people need to head off now. We did say it would be a 1 hour webinar. However, if you do have questions, I'm sure Freddy's happy to stay a few minutes to answer anything. I can see people jumping off. But yes, if you do just pop your question into the chat box. We will, of course, we did record this session and we will be sharing it later as well. So if you think about any questions in the meantime or want to catch up with Freddy later, of course, you can find him there on the screen, fred@imwt.com.au.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions today, so I'm gonna assume that means you nailed it, Freddie.
Of course. Oh,
Of course.
I've put everyone to sleep. I scare them off to do it. So yeah, there's a lot of learnings, but um it's the best way to get started. It's actually a technology that is surprisingly easy to use despite the scary sounding names. And really that's what made it so popular. It democratized a lot of the options that we have today in terms of content generations and leveraging AI. Used to be the realms of data scientists and data engineers. Now it's the everyday person can really leverage those powerful tools.
Yeah, we've come a long way, I think, and it's just going to keep evolving really quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll have another one on this topic in the not too distant future, I'd imagine. So I think that's it, and we'll leave everyone to it at 5 past. So thanks, Freddie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and have a great day. See you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.